Bit about grammar translation, and first I'll talk about a little bit about the features of grammar translation, and then I'm going to take you through a lesson, a grammar translation lesson. Um, okay, so the main goal of language learning in grammar translation is to read the literature of that language. And that seemed to be the end state. The ultimate goal in terms of proficiency is reading what is considered to be the great literature of that language. So the emphasis in terms of skills is on reading and writing. And the main technique through which we acquire language, we learn a language, is through the translation of texts and sentences into and out of the target language. Vocabulary tends to be restricted, that is, it's based on the readings, based on the reading texts. So it's not a case of choosing vocabulary in terms of frequency or in terms of usefulness, but it's determined by the actual text that is being read. The sentence is the basic unit of teaching and practice. And what is emphasized is accuracy, not fluency. That is accuracy in translation. And of course, there's a great stress put on memorization and rote memorization. The approach to grammar is a deductive approach. That is, the rules are presented and then the rules are practiced. And more or less throughout, the medium, the language of instruction is the L1. Okay, so now I'm going to take you through a lesson. The reason why I'm doing this is not to give you an historical artifact, but actually to show you a lesson which I think is a pretty reasonable lesson. What I'm trying to show you is that all the methods, all the techniques are still valid in some way. There's a truth in all different approaches to language teaching, and what I'm trying to do is for you to expand your repertoire of techniques and ideas you can bring to the classroom. Depending on the situation you're in, you may draw on some of these techniques. So let's have a look at this particular lesson. One thing to be said about grammar translation in this particular lesson is that it's dependent upon students who share an L1, and the actual success of the lesson really is dependent on an L1 which is Indo-European language, or better still, a Romance language or a European language. Okay, so let's have a look at this lesson. Okay, so this lesson is in Italian, and the other lessons I'm going to be talking about are all going to be in Italian. So I'm going to start with some work on vocabulary, and what I'm focusing on here in number one is the use of cognates. And of course cognates exist, there's a lot of cognates if you're coming from English to Italian, or even of course a lot more if you're coming from French or Spanish to Italian. So that's something we need to exploit from the start in any kind of teaching situation. What do students already know? So here you can go through here and you can probably guess the meaning of some of these words. Faccia, face, ritornare, return, incominciare, to begin or commence, dolce you probably know as sweet, blu is blue, the color blue, infinito, infinite, infinity. Stare is another form of two words for to be, so stare is stay or be. And then two more work on vocabulary, a matching one with some words that you may not, which are not cognates, but probably you can have some knowledge of. So il sole, the sun, il mondo, the world, il vento, the wind, il cielo, the sky, un sogno, a dream, and le mani, hands. Okay, so once we've had a look at vocabulary, we can have a look at grammar. And here, this is the imperfect tense, and we're presenting in a very deductive way. Here are the rules of formation of the imperfect tense, and then we're going to practice it with some translation to and from Italian. Italian into English, English into Italian. So as you'll notice, there are three basic verb forms in Italian: are verbs, ire verbs, and ere verbs. And it's an inflected language. It's a pro-drop language. We don't need a subject. We can tell the person through the actual inflection. So volavo, I was flying. Volavi, you were flying. Volava, he, she, or it was flying. Volavamo, we were flying. Volavate, you were flying. Volavano, they were flying, etc. So, and then you can look at the bottom part where you've got a translation exercise going in and out of Italian. So, I was beginning. Incominciavo. Dipingevo means I was painting. Venivo, I was coming. Sparire, it was disappearing. Spariva. Okay, so now we can go on to the actual text itself, and we're going to use a song. Let's pretend it's a poem, but it's still literature. And so this is the famous song Volare by Domenico Modugno. And here we'll probably do some translation. Now you've got some vocabulary and you've got some grammar. I can call upon you to translate. So let's give this a little try. Penso che un sogno così non ritorni mai più. I guess I think a dream like this I'll never have it again. Mi dipingevo le mani e la faccia di blu. I was painting my hands and face blue. Poi d'improvviso venivo dal vento rapito. Suddenly, and this is a passive construction, venire plus past participle, I was whisked up by the wind. E incominciavo a volare nel cielo infinito. And I began to fly in the infinite, endless sky. Volare, flying, cantare, singing, nel blu dipinto di blu, into the blue of the sky, painted blue. Felice di stare lassù, happy to be or to stay up there. E volavo, felice più in alto del sole ed ancora più su. And flying, I was flying, happy to be high above the sun and even further than that. Mentre il mondo pian piano spariva lontana laggiù, while the world slowly, gradually was disappearing far away down there. Una musica dolce suonava soltanto per me. Sweet music was playing just for me. Okay, so we've done our translation part, okay? And you can always have a listen to that song by various artists if you just go to YouTube and search for Volare. Okay, next we're probably going to do a little bit of comprehension questions in the form of written answers. So, di che colore era la sua faccia? What color was his face? Il colore della sua faccia era blu. And so we can continue with those comprehension written answers. And then 6 is a grammar focus. So we're looking at the verb pensare che, and this is followed by a subjunctive in Italian. And finally, some vocabulary work. Let's do work on opposites. Felice, the opposite is triste. Su, meaning up. Opposite is giù, meaning down. And dolce, opposite is amaro. Okay, so that's a basic grammar translation lesson. I'm going to do a little extension here and try and bring it a little bit up to date and show you how grammar translation still has a function to play, a part to play. So how about this? Grammar translation and internet shopping. We're going to go visit this particular site. If you want to buy a fantastic clothes for children at incredible prices, then go on the web and search for Anikini children's store, and you'll go to their website and you'll see some fabulous kids clothes. Yeah, as you can see, there is translation into English, Japanese, and Italian. And so we're going to play around with the Italian and the English versions of this website. So the Italian is the original, and it's translated into English. So what I've done is taken one of those web pages from Anikini's website, and I've compared the information part. Okay, and so just from the heading information and informazione, you can see, or you can begin to see, that in Italian we can make information plural. In English it's a non-countable noun. We can't talk about informations. So what we're doing here is we've got parallel texts, and we can go between the two and begin to learn some of the differences in the way that English and Italian works. And what I've got on the opposite next page is an activity for you to do based upon those parallel texts. So number one there, translate the following, so you can look at those two and you can directly find the words for those. Prezzi, prices, shop, negozio, clothes, vestiti, etc. And then we can do some translation. And this is interesting because we can compare how we say things in English and how they're said in Italian. 3 is further translation. And this really draws attention to differences in grammar. And then 4 is kind of a discovery learning situation where you look at the words, the nouns, and you can learn something about Italian and English nouns and the plural forms. Okay, so what I'm trying to do there is suggest to you something like grammar translation still has its possible applications. And we all have a need, in many ways, to translate things. We all have a need to ask questions in the L1. When we look at audiolingual method, we find that the L1 is completely excluded. And the L1 has to be understood as a resource, as a strategy for getting at the L2. So one of the strengths, in a sense, of grammar translation is that it does take into consideration the fact that we have a first language, and we can use that first language to get at the second language by using it as a medium of instruction in the classroom and by using the principle of translation.